big part of my research was based on their suicidal ideations.
The partners?
The partners.
Wow.
The partners, because we always know that we have them. Like I was like, no, I know we have suicidal ideations. Like it was kind of like, duh. But then they said no. Once I started talking to them, they said they felt so helpless and hopeless, but they didn't really have anyone to talk to about it. None of their friends or family knew about PMDD. And then also a lot of the partners didn't even share the diagnosis to other people. So they internalized it so much for long periods of time that it made them get to those low moments.
I have never heard this before. Like I've never heard this type of research in terms of the actual partner experiencing these types of thoughts. It's time for confession. Welcome to Her Health Confessions. I'm your host, Britney, and today we have Dr. Rose Alkattan, who is a PMDD Relationship Psychotraumatologist who has navigated her own PMDD journey for over 17 years. Dr. Rose is the host of the In Love with PMDD podcast and the founder of the PMDD Partners Breakup Proof Academy. In this episode, Dr. Rose shares her personal confession, revealing the challenging realities of living with PMDD, including some of those symptoms that can mimic ADD and OCD. She discusses the profound impact of PMDD on relationships and the silent struggles that the actual partners tend to face, often leading to severe stress and health complications. Our conversation highlights her groundbreaking PhD research on the experiences of the actual partners of PMDD sufferers, uncovering feelings of helplessness and even suicidal ideation that they too can experience. She provides tools and strategies to navigate PMDD relationships, emphasizing acceptance, communication, and mutual support. Whether you're directly affected by PMDD or know someone who is, or you're a partner of someone who suffers from PMDD, this episode will provide you with the knowledge and the hope for meaningful change. Dr. Rose, thank you so much for being on this episode. So before we jump into the topic of your expertise, I want to remind our audience the mission of this podcast is to serve as a safe space to shed light on this range of health struggles that women they often honestly face silently. So with gratitude for your vulnerability, Dr. Rose, what is your health confession?
My health confession today would be I have a premenstrual dysphoric disorder, and I'm actually on day 13 of PMDD. So it normally is about 14 to 16 days in my menstrual cycle, and I am on day 13 of that. So for the last 13 days, I've been suffering with symptoms that range from anxiety and very bad intrusive thoughts, overthinking, a little bit of OCD, ADD, like all of that going on, night sweats, and just a lot of physical and mental symptoms that I've been having.
I'm curious, how long have you had PMDD for?
17 years. So I know. Yeah. Yeah. So I have a daughter. She's 14, but I knew that I had something. I didn't know that it was PMDD for the whole 17 years. But when I really figured it out, it was kind of like that light bulb of, oh, that's what's been going on.
So did you have symptoms before you had your daughter, or did they get worse after the pregnancy? Like, how did that?
Yeah, they definitely got worse after I had my daughter because I was trying to have a child. So that's when I really recognized that I had a disorder because I was tracking my symptoms. I wanted to know when I was ovulating so I could know when to, have sex and all of these things. So when I noticed that I was stopped tracking, but I still noticed this fluctuation in moods, I had come off of birth control. And so I thought initially, oh, it's because I came off of birth control. This is why I'm having all of these symptoms. And it came way after I had my daughter. And then I noticed the pattern before.
Interesting. So you've obviously tried, as you said, birth control. What other sort of modalities or things have you done to try and, I guess, reduce those PMDD symptoms?
I tried everything in the beginning. I remember even after I had my daughter, I really, I said, okay, well, I'll just take the uterus out. I was so extreme with it because I was like, if this is what's causing it, just give me the oophorectomy, just take everything. And I remember going to the doctor like that in tears. And I think I was 30 years old and I was single at the time because I split from my ex-husband and my daughter was just like a couple years old. And so the doctor said, no, we're not going to do it. Number one, you're too young. Number two, you're single. And number three, you only have one child. So it kind of canceled me out for that being like a solution. And so I did try the birth controls on and off, but I always get the side effects. You know, those things they say on the commercials with all like really, really fast, like all the fine print. I'm like, that's me. Or like that long list. Yes. So frustrated from the high estrogen to the low estrogen and everything in between. It didn't matter. I just got really bad side effects that started to add on to my PMDD. So I was like, and now I have this all month long, you know?
Oh, yeah. As I said, most of my listeners will know, like I myself was diagnosed with a very severe case of PMDD. So I really understand how debilitating those symptoms can be. Yeah. You mentioned before ADD. Have you been diagnosed with ADHD as well? Or is this something that's more like traits and those sorts of symptoms show up with the PMDD?
I have traits when I'm in PMDD. When I'm outside of PMDD, it's nowhere to be found. Even if I would say that to people, they're like, no, you don't. Like, you're not, because I'm normally very focused, very disciplined. But I noticed when I go into PMDD, everything is so overwhelming. It's like I wake up in the morning and it's like, do I walk the dog first? Do I go to the bathroom first? Do I take my vitamins first? Do I get some water? Do I squeeze a lemon? Like, it's like, I was like, what is going on? And like, I'm like a little puppy walking in circles. It's like, I don't know what to do first.
100%. It's just like focus is not even a thing.
Yeah. It's so hard.
I hear you on that. So I guess with the PMDD, how has that impacted your life? Like in what ways? Obviously, those symptoms can be really debilitating. What's the worst aspect of PMDD and how, like, that it's impacted your actual personal life?
Yeah, that's why I focus on relationships, because it really impacts my relationships the worst. I remember, finding holistic ways to manage certain symptoms, like maybe my anxiety. I can do like the deep breathing and I can move my body. It feels really good to me. But like my relationships are always the worst. And I feel like that was the thing where I feel like I can't, like there was no tool for me. Like I can't figure this part out. And so it was the most frustrating thing, because I knew that I wanted to be in a relationship. So it was like, oh, I have to figure something out if I want to, like, because I was so young. So I was like, I have to figure this out or else I'm just going to be single for the rest of my life.
Oh, it's such a common thing that I hear from women I work with, but even myself, like I really struggled with relationships because I think I had PMDD for 20 years before it was diagnosed, and relationships were a really big struggle. Like I literally felt insane why I would keep targeting a partner. So that'll lead me on to then my next question. So can you share with us your personal journey with, I guess, PMDD, which you've done a little bit about, but what exactly then inspired you to pursue a PhD on this topic?
So I was originally going to do it on childhood trauma when I was going through my dissertation phase. I started writing it, and the dissertation is a very, very long process. And so I remember initially just talking about my childhood trauma and researching that. And I saw that it was a lot of, individuals that had researched childhood trauma and it had been done before and it was very easy. And then I remember just like looking up PMDD one time when I was up late doing research, like in where you get all the articles from. And I saw like nothing there because it was like way before. I was like, wait a minute, like, why is nobody researching this? Like, why is this not a thing? And so I remember thinking to myself, well, if I don't do it, and if I just do it in childhood trauma, I was looking at, there was thousands of articles already in childhood trauma. So many studies had been done. So many things had been highlighted. And I really wanted to make a difference and kind of research something that wasn't already in the literature. And I remember my doctoral professor saying, this is going to take you longer because you have to base it off of prior research. You have to interview people. You have to go through this whole journey. Whereas if you do it on childhood trauma, you could be done in like a year from now, because you already have people, like everybody, will admit that they have childhood trauma, but half the people don't even know that they have PMDD. So when you go to get like participants, you might not have anyone for a long period of time because they're going to be like, it's what? Like,
oh yeah.
I said, well, somebody has to be like the first one to do it, because even when I was looking at PMDD, it was talking a lot about SSRIs and it was talking about potential treatment plans and being misdiagnosed, but there was nothing specifically on relationships. And I'm like, how are they researching all of these other things and are leaving out this really big thing that kept like following me every single month when I was like going through PMDD?
100% is a really great topic. And I'm so glad that you actually did research on it, because I said it is so common, and it seems to be even, there's personal relationships with your partner, but there's also relationships with family members or friends that a lot of women really struggle with. So that whole relationship side, I think, is really, really important. But from your research on relationships and the experiences of partners, of individuals with PMDD, can you share, I guess, some of the key findings in the research that you did?
Yeah, so I've actually based my research on specifically targeting the partners. I wanted to know what they were going through. I knew what I was going through. I could feel it. I knew it. But I'm like, these partners, you're not hearing from them. You're not understanding their struggle. And I had a lot of private clients at that time, just coaching, because I originally started with coaching. And I was just like, I'm just going to coach. And then I would have these private sessions with just the partners one-on-one. And they would be like breaking down in tears and outside of their partner. And then they would say, please don't tell my partner, that this, because I feel like they're going through so much. They're the ones with the disorder. That's what they kept saying. They're the ones with the disorder. I don't feel like I am worth saying anything about what I'm going through because I don't have anything. I haven't been diagnosed with anything. And so why would I take the attention off of them when I'm watching them suffer? And a big part of my research was based on their suicidal ideations. They had a lot of, it got so bad. The partners.
Wow.
The partners, because we always know that we have them. Like I was like, no, I know we have suicidal ideations. Like it was kind of like, duh. But then they said, no, once I started talking to them, they said they felt so helpless and hopeless. And that was the reason that led them to that, because they would be watching their partner suffer. They would be being accused of the reason why they're suffering. There was a lot of blaming and shaming, and you're the one that triggers me and you make my PMDD bad. And if it wasn't for you, I would be dealing with my PMDD so much better. Like there was all of these things, and they're like, it was so much for them to take, because they would start to question themselves, like, am I a bad person? Am I causing my partner to suffer? Am I the reason they have PMDD? Like they would really be internalizing this, but they didn't really have anyone to talk to about it. None of their friends or family knew about PMDD. And then also, just as a friend, like you couldn't just tell your friend like, hey man, or, hey, whatever, like, oh, my partner has PMDD, because you're trying to protect them. A lot of the partners didn't even share the diagnosis to other people. So they internalized it so much for a long period of time that it made them get to those low moments, and they would come out of it, but then they would somehow find themselves back into it, because they would be like, I know I don't want to leave my partner, but this is my life right now.
I have never heard this before. Like I've never heard this type of research in terms of the actual partner experiencing these types of thoughts. We all know that women with PMDD, but at the same token, that makes so much sense, because as you said, the partners of the people that are experiencing PMDD feel so hopeless. And I know this from my husband, like he felt so hopeless that he had no idea what to do. A common theme with him was he had to brace himself when he knew that PMDD this is when I had very severe PMDD. I've reduced my symptoms by such a significant amount. I don't really qualify for PMDD anymore. But at the time, it was so severe that like you said, you could sense that this person had, my husband, no idea what to do and felt so helpless. But I'd never heard that they actually potentially could end up with those types of thoughts, which makes perfect sense given this perfect storm with someone with PMDD and then a partner having absolutely no idea what to do, which is quite serious. Mm-hmm. Wow, unbelievable. So I guess life with a PMDD partner is definitely challenging. We definitely know that. And it's really great that you've got this other side. So I guess, what are some common challenges that those partners of individuals with PMDD face? Like you've mentioned, they feel really hopeless. Mm-hmm. They don't know what to do. They also feel like they're blamed for all of the problems. But do you have any tips on how partners can help overcome those challenges and how they might best support their loved one who has PMDD?
So I think when you're going through hard times within your PMDD relationship, one of the things that you say is kind of like a last resort, which a lot of clients come to me at a last resort. It's like, let's just go to counseling. That's always like the fix it thing. Like, let's not break up. Let's just go to counseling. And I think that what really came out for me is that the partner needs to have just as much support one-on-one with counseling and coping with what they're experiencing on an ongoing basis so that they're able to show up and support their partner better. Because without that, there is a lot of bitterness and resentment, and it's unforgiveness. And I know we've all had different journeys in PMDD. Earlier in my journey, I was horrible. I mean, horrible when I experienced that rage. I did some things and I'm just thinking, I can't believe I did that. You apologize and you say, I'm sorry that I did it, or it was just PMDD and all of these things. And the partner may forgive you in the moment because they want to enjoy their follicular days with you. They want to enjoy the good days, but they're still holding on to the things that you said to them. They're still holding on to the things that you did. And there was a lot of fear there. And we had to reveal what was really going on with them. And I always say, you cannot heal what you don't reveal. So you need to have that safe space to open up and say, I am actually scared of my partner. I saw a side of them I had never seen. And a lot of partners will say, I didn't sign up for this. Like, it's actually scary because how sweet and nice your partner can be, when they see them do the opposite, they don't really know the predictability of it, like what they could do, especially if they try to de-escalate the situation and it didn't work. There's a lot of fear. So they kind of start, it's that cookie cutter walking on eggshells. I've had every client come to me and say, I feel like I'm walking on eggshells. The partner feels like, I feel like I can't say anything right. I can't breathe right. With my ex-partner, it was snoring. I had an issue with snoring because of the sensitivity to noise. Yeah. So I would be like, oh my gosh, you're trying to cause me to suffer. Like, it was so bad for me. And he's like, I can't breathe around you without it being a problem. So I think them just having that outlet is something that they really need in order to be a supportive PMDD partner, because I feel like us as PMDD sufferers, a lot of times we're so quick to say, I need a supportive PMDD partner. I need a supportive PMDD partner, but we're not painting a picture of what that looks like and how we're supporting our partner being supportive.
Yeah, 100%. Like you mentioned, there's two things. You mentioned that, in the beginning days, and you hear it a lot where women are like, I feel really horrible, and they have guilt and shame then for how they treat their partner. In that regard, what was the thing that sort of, made you have a little bit more self-awareness or regulation? Like, what were the tools that you used for yourself to be able to de-escalate or be more aware of those situations so they weren't heightening, like you said, that they were back in the day?
Yeah, it's one of my tools that I use with my private clients called the PMDD Pivot. And I use that method because I remember thinking about it after the fact, like, next time I need to be able to stop myself in the middle of it, because I saw my partner hurting so bad and I had kind of come off of the high of PMDD rage, and I felt horrible. I immediately felt that guilt, and I was like, next time I need to stop myself. And then I tried and it didn't work, and I tried and it didn't work. And I'm like, I need to consciously have a tool to use, because just trying to wing it and just like wishing and hoping that I could stop myself wasn't really working, because you feel like that when you're calm, but then when you're in the moment, it's like you're in the moment. Like you just black out. It's like you're not thinking of a tool. You're not thinking of anything. You're thinking, I feel justified in what I'm saying. I feel justified in what I'm doing. They deserve this because they triggered me and they did this and they're malicious and all of these things. And then when that goes away, then it's like, oh, I wish I would have done something different. So I use the PMDD Pivot method because it slows everything down. It kind of helps you step by step do it. And P is for pause. So that's the first thing. And the PMDD Pivot. And then I is investigate. Investigate. Did my partner really do this maliciously? I always say, don't really go off of what your PMDD brain is telling you, because it's telling you your partner's being malicious. Your partner's the enemy. They want to see you suffer. All of these things. It's really stop and investigate it. And then ask your partner. Verify. That's the V. Verify with your partner whether they're doing something malicious or if they're doing it subconsciously. Because a lot of times if you just tell your partner calmly, like, hey, babe, this is triggering me, they'll stop. But they don't know it in the moment. And then so that's the O, which is observe your partner's response before. And all of this is before you're acting. And then T is trust what your partner is telling you. Because so many times your partner could say, oh, no, babe, I didn't do that on purpose. It's like, I know you did it on purpose. So then you have to really trust the core of who you know your partner is. I always have my clients paint me a picture of who you know your partner is versus what PMDD is telling you that your partner is in those moments where you're experiencing those triggers and that rage.
Ooh, really useful. It's a question that I had for you later on the pivot. So that's brilliant. I'm probably going to circle back to that again. There's something else that you said earlier, though, that kind of piqued my interest. You said with the partner that there's actually some fear. What fear? What are they fearing potentially?
They're fearing that they don't know how far you will go. So a lot of times I always say individuals who have PMDD are some of the sweetest, nicest, kindest people ever. And so a lot of times there's a lot of shame about maybe I really am this person in PMDD. Like maybe this really is me. Like you feel really bad about yourself when you maybe think of some of the things that you said and done and you're like, is this the real me or is it the PMDD me? But they're just the sweetest, nicest people. And that's who your partner fell in love with. So if you are acting in the antithesis of this, you're not being sweet, you're not being nice, you're not being kind, you're not being considerate, you're not thinking about the impact that your words and your actions are having on your partner because you're feeling so fired up in the moment, they don't know this person. They're fearing being in a relationship with someone that they honestly don't recognize. Like my partner used to always say, I look differently in PMDD. Like my eyes look different. Like you looked at, like he could tell when I was in PMDD just by looking at me, or my mannerisms were different. So it's kind of like, it's scary to be in this relationship with someone. Like if I was very extroverted and lively and bubbly and happy, like I normally am, and then I go into PMDD and I become like a little hermit sometimes. I'm like really quiet. I'm like really, and he's just like looking like, what's going on, you know? And you try to ask you try to get them to come out of their shell. And it's like, I'm fine. And so they don't know this person that they're in a relationship with for those 10 to 14 days. And they have to sit with that. And that's scary.
100%. Again, when you said walking on eggshells, like it's a very common theme you'll hear. They feel like they're walking on eggshells, but I can't imagine how confronting that would be for a partner where the personality is basically, it's like a switch. Like 1 minute, all of a sudden you said they're sweet and then the next minute they're not. So how much would PMDD education for partners, like what percentage would you say how important that is for partners to become educated? Because we're hearing so many cases of couples breaking up, or like I myself get so many DMs from men, and obviously the relationship side, it's your domain, but so many men that are like, I don't know what to do. And then the other problem that I'm also noticing is some men are coming to me and they're saying, she has all the symptoms. I know it's PMDD, but I don't know how to support her because she doesn't believe it's PMDD. So what could potentially someone do in that case as well? They believe the partner has it. They want to help. They want to learn all the tools, but the partner doesn't necessarily believe they have PMDD. Is there anything that some of these men, I guess, could do?
Yeah, I have a lot of private clients like that. Actually, they reach out to me and they've actually like paid for sessions. And then they've actually come back and said, you know what? I can't really get my partner to come because she doesn't believe that she has this. It's almost like this. What I noticed is when I finally get the other partner that's suffering with PMDD on the session with me, because I try to get to the root of like, what's the resistance? What is the resistance in coming and meeting with me? Because if you don't feel like you have it, then why not just come to the session? Like there's almost this like barrier. It's like if someone told me they think I have autism and they want me to go see an autistic specialist to, get diagnosed or whatever, and I don't believe I have it, I'll go talk to them because I'm like, I don't think that you're going to find anything because I don't believe I have it. Well, when they get on the sessions with me, what they're feeling is that their partner's trying to fix them. Their partner is trying to treat them like this thing that's something wrong with them and try to label them. And they have a resistance to the label. And they feel like everything in this relationship isn't about me. It's not my fault. And you're just trying to make it be that I have this diagnosis and now I'm the problem in the relationship. And so they're not wanting to come. And so what I would say to the partner is instead of approaching it as you have PMDD, there's something wrong with you. This is what happens in our relationship every single month, because they'll literally track it on a calendar. Like the partners are so knowledgeable. They pay such close attention. I admire them so much research. And they're like, Dr. Rose, I listened to your podcast. I know that I looked it up. This is what they have, but they won't come. And it's like, I want you both to say, we need to go and talk to someone about our relationships. It has to be a mutual accountability on both parts. Because if you don't take accountability for the things that you're doing consciously or subconsciously, they're not going to jump on board and take the brunt of everything, because it's both of you have something to do with it. But if you put everything on the side of PMDD, where PMDD may be the problem, but when you're trying to get your partner to get help, you can say, babe, I know that I'm probably triggering you when I do this, this, and this, and I'm really trying hard and I don't always get it right sometimes. So I really want to do this for us, or I don't want to continue to see you suffer in this particular way. Can we just go and talk to someone just so I can make it about getting relief for the PMDD sufferer instead of getting labeled by the practitioner saying you have PMDD.
Yep, I really resonate with that. I can imagine in many scenarios where women, it's that being fixed issue, which, even outside of PMDD, we always know that, there can be a tendency for, the men to want to fix, etc. What about in regards to with PMDD? There are many scenarios that I have come across as well, though, where the woman is in a relationship. She knows she has PMDD. She's really struggling, but the partner is not supportive, or the partner is being very dismissive, or the partner is not acknowledging what is going on. In some regards, it seems like some women might actually be in a relationship that might be more detrimental. And, there are some cases which the woman's like, I left the relationship and my PMDD went away. And I'm like, well, then it might not necessarily be PMDD. And they're like, it was the relationship. But I would love for, the women that are genuinely struggling with PMDD and they need their partner to be more supportive or on board, but have huge resistance from the partner. What could they do in this scenario?
In these scenarios, what I've seen is that they have a lot of unmet needs. The partner who does not have PMDD has so many unmet needs, and they're so bitter and resentful because they're not getting their needs met that they don't even want to meet you to help you to relieve your suffering, because they're suffering and they think everything is about PMDD. Every single time, they feel like they're getting mistreated and no one is trying to help them get their basic needs met, whether it's the needs for intimacy, right? There has to be a lack of intimacy, because if you're intimate with your partner, and I don't just mean sex, if you're intimate, meaning you're close, you know what's going on, you're connected, you're not going to want to see your partner suffer. So when you're in that place and you notice that your partner doesn't care that you're suffering, you're not connected. So instead of focusing on, you need to do this and you need to do this and you need to, and why don't you do this and why don't you do this? Focus on, what is it that I can do for you? Take the focus off of yourself. And I know you may be thinking, I'm suffering, I'm barely surviving. If you want your partner to be supportive, you're going to have to shift your focus momentarily to what's really going on. You have to get to the brink of feeling connected again so that they can feel that empathy to be able to be supportive and want to help you. But if they've been trying to be intimate with you and you shut down on intimacy for what I say 40 days and 40 nights, you haven't touched each other, you're not connected, all these things, but then you're like, you need to do this and take this off of my plate. It's like, there's two people in the relationship. And if you're in a relationship, you have a responsibility to help meet each other's needs for emotional support, intimacy, physical connection, having conversations, not just shutting down or just talking about your suffering in a way that they're not to blame. Almost start talking about PMDD as a separate entity and not, you're triggering me because I'm in PMDD. You're triggered. Don't make them the problem and then expect them to find a solution for you.
What about safety? So in regards to, if I relay it back to myself, which obviously this was many, many years ago, but I noticed that around PMDD, there's obviously a lack of safety within ourselves. And that can be, obviously you mentioned trauma earlier too, which I might even circle back with, but there is a lack of safety that we tend to feel within ourselves. And then if we have a relationship that potentially, it sounds like, you're mentioning communication is such a big part. And if you don't have that open dialogue and communication, and as you said, even intimacy that's non-sexual, there might be a lack of safety that's happening on both partners, the PMDD partner and the other one. So what are some things that they could maybe do to create more of that open dialogue and communication so that they can have that vulnerability and authenticity and transparency to create more safety so that the woman can then tend to feel a little bit more relaxed in that phase where her PMDD symptoms can be pretty heightened?
I know communication is really, really hard when you're in PMDD because you have a lot of confusion. You feel like you can't even think straight half of the time. you may have a point that you're trying to make with your partner, but you can't remember certain things and then you feel really bad about it. And this is why I believe in journaling. Written communication a lot of times can help you get out what it is that you need to say to your partner. Even text messages. It doesn't have to be like an actual journal, but I remember with me, I used to be able to send text messages that were the truth of what I wanted to say. And then I can pick it up and talk about it later, but then you get a chance to look at it. Sometimes you feel intimidated in the moment of trying to feel like, because you feel bad if you like forget a thought in the middle of a conversation, then you're kind of just like, what's the point? Never mind. I don't want to communicate. So I would say just think about what feels best to you, writing it down, texting it, sending an email, taking the pressure off of yourself to show up in the moment live and express things, and just take some time, write something down, review it for a little bit, maybe, and give it to them later on. And then that way you're showing them that you're trying, but you're not putting the pressure on yourself as a person who's suffering in PMDD with all of these symptoms where it's too much going on. It's too much stimulation. Like it's too much pressure. You're already feeling anxiety. It just may not feel good to sit there and have a conversation when you're like all over the place in your mind, but it's not like you don't want to. So just do it when it feels comfortable to you and in the way that it feels comfortable to you.
You mentioned, obviously, you said you have PMDD yourself. You've really firsthand got some real experience with this, as well as relationships, and you've done this amazing PhD with research. Has doing the research been able to cross over and translate into your own personal life with being able to understand like how to manage your own relationships? Because I find it's really interesting. A lot of these brilliant experts that we have that become really great in their domain, it's usually because they've been trying to solve their own problem or they have personal experience with it. And then they become so great at it. So it's obviously something that you've gone to do, but have you found that it has been able to alleviate or provide relief or some deeper understanding that you were searching for back at that time when things were a little bit more chaotic?
Yes, I think definitely one of the things that I focus on that I realized was a thing when I was doing my research were the attachment styles. My attachment style changes when I go into PMDD and I get an avoidant attachment style with whatever partner I have. And then I come out of it and I have a secure attachment style. So there's this push and pull, and just navigating it and understanding it and being aware of it helps me put things in place, because I no longer think that my partner's picking at me. It's like, I know this fact about me as a person with PMDD. I know that when I go into PMDD, I'm going to get more avoidant. So I'm going to put tools and mannerisms in place to where I can still connect with my partner. I'm not neglecting them. I'm not abandoning them and telling them, oh, because I'm in PMDD, you're on your own. So it's being more self-aware of what happens to me when I shift into PMDD, and being able to, what I call is rewiring my PMDD brain every single month, where I know what exactly happens to my brain when I go into PMDD. And I've noticed with all of my clients, it's different for everybody. It's very individualistic. Some people's attachment styles go from avoidant to anxious or secure. Like sometimes it's no attachment style. But you just have to really pay attention to yourself, which I've had to do, and recognize what comes up for me, which symptoms are what I call in my highlight reel.
Can you explain for everyone that doesn't understand what attachment styles are, what you're referring to?
Yes. So the way that you connect to your partner on that intimate level. And so avoidant means when I go into PMDD, I get more closed off. I'm very independent. I got this. I don't really want the support of my partner. I kind of want to do everything on my own. And so the anxious attachment style, which is, a lot of times what my partner used to get, it's like that, oh, I'm going away and then they're coming to chase me, because it's that intense need for intimacy, affection. And it's so intense that you feel like you're losing your partner. So there's a sense of that you can't grasp them. And it's almost like the more I ran, the more he came. And so we were just like doing this dance. And so what you really want is a secure attachment style, meaning we can both spend our time independently and then come together and it be in a healthy way where we're not pulling at each other, grasping for affection. We're just independently, we're able to exist without each other, like on a day-to-day basis, and not feel insecure. And then we're able to come together and still feel that support without feeling like we have to pull it and grab it from the partner.
Brilliant. In terms of, I myself went deep into attachment styles many years ago in relationships, myself personally, because I also had a trauma background as I was younger. So I needed to learn, how to overcome that. But people that have these attachment styles like anxious, is there a possibility to move to secure? And then if there is, are there tools or things that they can do? Is it just about maybe self-awareness, moving from, and also do you notice a theme with some of your clients that they tend to be more of a certain attachment style than others, or no, it's varied amongst PMDD sufferers?
I would say if there's one avoidant, there's one anxious. I believe they pull it out of each other. And there's almost this kind of like, for the partner that's anxious, they almost say, I wish I could be, as avoidant as you are, because they feel like it's better. Like there's more chill. There's no anxiety on it. Like, I wish I could be as laid back. And it's like, no, when you're avoidant, it's kind of like, you see the other partner as like a nuisance, like they're like a burden, because it's like, I'm giving you everything I got and it's not that much, but this is all I have. And so the more the anxious partner is like, I need more. It's like, this is where the monthly breakups come in, because you're like, I have nothing else for you. Like, I got to get out of here. Like you're taking everything I have to survive in PMDD. You're taking it away from me and you're trying to like squeeze the tube of toothpaste, as I call it. And there's nothing left. Like, this is it. And so I think just really recognizing how you're feeling when your partner goes into PMDD, what you can do is put things in place to let your partner know, the one that's anxious, I'm not going anywhere. So many times when I used to ask for space, that translated to my partner is you want to break up. You don't want to be with me anymore, because in their mind, they couldn't imagine taking that amount of space and time without being connected. It didn't translate. And they sat in that place of fear that they were going to lose me. So I was wanting space to just be on my own, to feel like, okay, I don't have to like pour into you right now. You're fine. Like, and the whole time I was doing that, they were feeling like, oh my gosh, like maybe there's that insecurity. Like maybe they're talking to somebody else. If they're not talking to me, maybe they're talking to somebody else, or maybe they're meeting someone else's needs. And there's this storyline that they tell themselves in their mind. And then they come back and it's just this push and pull.
I recommend everyone who is listening to dive into attachment styles, because as I said, I went down them. I was someone, so for everyone who's listening, I was actually an anxious, and I've now moved into secure, and my husband was avoidant and has now moved into secure. It took us many years to, we really did some deep diving into understanding those attachment styles, but they really did play a significant role. And I think understanding them, as you said, really can have a maybe pivotal point in being able to have that connection and understanding each other and how you can work through it, especially for girls with PMDD. So I'm really glad you brought up attachment styles, because I think they're brilliant and everyone needs to do a deep dive into them.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
So you've spoken about the importance of accepting PMDD symptoms. I've seen you mention this. I'm not sure if it was on one of your podcasts or social media, but it was about accepting the PMDD symptoms to prevent the breakups instead of having this resistance to the PMDD. And I thought, this is a really great analogy. Can you elaborate on how acceptance can maybe positively impact relationships?
I think so many times, because nobody likes PMDD, right? Nobody wants this, that a lot of times we as the PMDD sufferers put so much energy in trying to either deny that we have PMDD or try to cure PMDD or try to just make it go away. And you put so much focus on that you don't really take the time to say, you know what, because when you accept that you have it, the next step is to do something about it. But if you never just sit in that moment of like, you know what, I have PMDD. I have PMDD. And then what does that look like? What do I specifically need to do to help my relationship when I go into PMDD? Because you need to be able to move forward with that next step and just don't fight it. And it's not saying that I want people to have PMDD forever. I don't want that, but I want you to spend your energy wisely. You don't have a lot of energy in PMDD anyway. So if you spend the whole time resisting it and denying your reality, you're not helping your relationship, because you're not approaching your partner and approaching your relationship and saying, okay, I know I'm going to go into PMDD. I'm going to have these symptoms. Babe, let's talk about this. Let's do a PMDD plan. Are things going to go exactly to plan? Absolutely not. But if you feel more equipped and confident having the tools of what to do about your symptoms versus if you just completely wing it. Every single time that you wing it, PMDD rips the blanket off of you every single month and you act shocked and surprised. Oh my gosh, here goes these intrusive thoughts. Oh my gosh, here goes this anxiety. You had that last month. So we need to just start the month off, and especially when you're in your follicular days, and just plan for it. Just sit in it and just say, you know what, I have PMDD.
Yeah, I totally agree with this. It was something that it's a real theme. Obviously, you know, I work in PMDD as well, but it's a real theme where I've noticed, and I speak to myself with this many, many years ago, the hypervigilance that would kick in around PMDD, that, as you said, you'd be trying to do everything to resist feeling that way. It's a real thing. And I noticed that sometimes it even can stem from, you know, being so uncomfortable with the sensations in our body. So I find that what you said can be really valuable in terms of being able to accept where you are that day. And then even reaching out, like, as you said, to your partner to be able to say, this is how I'm feeling that day, or, you know, I'm really triggered by this. And just being in acceptance of where you are can sometimes really calm down that nervous system from escalating it, from being in such hypervigilance. So I think that's a really, really great tool for relationships. I have a follow-on question then with, like, what would be some misconceptions about PMDD in relationships, if any? And I guess, what are the most common issues that you've noticed or experienced with couples?
So I'm currently writing a book. I can say the name of the book because nobody's going to steal it.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So I'm writing a book based off of a quote that I put on my page before, and it's called "Being Single is Not a Cure for PMDD." That is normally what people genuinely think. You know, once I break up with my partner, I'm not going to have PMDD anymore. I'm going to be free. I'm going to be, you know, symptom free, all of these things that I've been. And I think it's because of the long period of time, but I've been single and I've been in relationships and I've had PMDD in both instances. And here's the thing. Does your partner trigger you? Are you more likely to get triggered when you have a partner? Absolutely. But do all of your symptoms go away? Like night sweats, you know, and you still may have intrusive thoughts. Like you said, it can be in other relationships that you have, you know, relationships with your coworker where you feel like they don't like you. You feel like they're talking about you. You have these kind of this paranoia that you get when you're in PMDD, even if you didn't have a partner. I have clients that go to work or with their family members, you know, their children trigger them, you know, whatever close relationship that you have, it is going to trigger you when you have PMDD. So throwing away your partner or getting a different partner, a lot of times it's like, oh, it's just because I have this partner that I have PMDD. If I get another partner, I wouldn't have PMDD. Like if my partner was super chill, I wouldn't have PMDD. No, they're just going to trigger you differently. Whatever partner that you have, once you have PMDD, you are going to have to find a way to navigate it. You cannot work around that. You cannot avoid it. It is just something else that you have to accept.
I'm going to completely bungle this quote, but you know that quote that's like something along the lines of whatever your problems are, they will follow you. And I think that's very much true because, as you said, if you have PMDD and you jump from this relationship to the next, you know, those symptoms are just going to show up or be triggered in a different way. That is not to say I am endorsing if you are in a very, very toxic relationship where there is abuse, different story. That's not what we're discussing. Yeah. But I think you're very much right that it is an issue that has to really at its core be resolved within yourself because it's just going to follow you. Our problems follow us until we kind of do the work within. So yeah, I think you're spot on. I am so looking forward to this book though, and the title of that book. Oh, I can't wait for that to come out. So I'm going to bring you back on the podcast to discuss that one. Yes, I love it. Advise not to believe the intrusive thoughts that come with the PMDD brain. And I'm a massive advocate for this, especially when it comes to neuroplasticity. But why do these intrusive thoughts focus on someone's partner, such as, you know, I want to leave them or we aren't compatible? And how can this potential intrusive thoughts with the brain potentially be managed?
So PMDD tricks your brain. One of the things that you mainly want when you're in PMDD, and I've heard every single client, everyone that I've talked to, you just want peace. Everyone says, I just want peace in PMDD. I just want peace. There's so much chaos because of the compound effect of how many symptoms that you're having at one time. It's chaotic mentally. It's chaotic physically. It's chaotic emotionally. There's so much going on at the same time. You know, if you had a different disorder, and I'm not glorifying any other disorders, but I'm saying if I have anxiety, I have anxiety. I'm focused on, you know, the anxious feeling and stuff like that. PMDD is anxiety, depression, intrusive thoughts, obsessive thoughts, like all of these things at one time. And so what PMDD tricks you into thinking is if you remove something from your plate, that's going to give you the peace that you want. It's almost like you're scanning the perimeter of who to blame. PMDD is like, okay, so who is around you? Who is the closest person to you? A lot of times that is your partner. If it's not your partner, it's your child or, coworker or whatever. So when your brain is telling you you just want to break up, it's probably because maybe your partner is triggering you and that's the highlight of what you're experiencing. You're also experiencing other symptoms, but it seems like it's in the forefront of your mind. So you feel like I need to break up with my partner in order to get the peace that I want while I'm experiencing PMDD. And so that's where the monthly breakups come in, because you really don't have the capacity to really be arguing with your partner and fighting, and you don't have the capacity to do it. But here's the thing. When you have a partner, your partner expects you to show up. There's another entity that is engaging with you. It's coming towards you. It's calling you out and kind of saying, babe, we need to talk about this. We have a problem about this. You don't have other symptoms that are literally calling you out. Like if you're depressed and you want to shut down and go under the covers and take a nap, depression isn't going to rip the covers off of you and stop you, but another person will. If you say you want to talk about, this is why you think that you need to get away from your partner and you need to break up, because it is another human being that's calling you out on exposing all of these things that you genuinely don't have the energy to.
Exactly. I think that's spot on. What would be the most extreme PMDD relationship experience or issue be that you've seen within your counseling?
I had a partner come on my podcast before, and he said because of the abuse that he experienced from his partner who has PMDD, he went to the doctor and he had an enlarged artery from the stress that he was enduring over the course of their relationship. He was having like these heart palpitations. He really didn't understand what was going on. He just went just to go. And when they did the MRI and the scan, that's what they discovered, because he had the same position for over a period of time. And they said, you're in such extreme stress for such a long, continuous period of time. So this is like chronic stress. Every single month, it was completely chaotic. And this is what he said on my podcast is you cannot leave PMDD untreated. When you leave it untreated and you're not really doing anything about it and you're just winging it every single month, you're leaving yourself and your partner susceptible to abuse. And the most damaging thing is when your partner calls you abusive, when you are physically or verbally abusive to your partner, and you have to live with that. And what I mean by live with that, you have to live with knowing that you actually did say and do those things that your partner is saying, because of course you want to just immediately deny it and say, I'm not abusive. But when they're calling you out and saying, no, you said this to me, you did this to me, you put your hands on me, you did, like, this is what I mean by leaving it untreated. Those are those extreme cases to where it escalates. Maybe 1 month you're just yelling and yelling and yelling. And then the next month you may start breaking things right in the house. I've seen so many instances where partners are throwing things, breaking electronics, TVs. They're doing it in front of their kids because they're having those moments where they're feeling that. And then now their child is seeing this behavior. And, it's one thing to talk to your partner about it and ask for forgiveness and stuff like that. But when you're involved in a family and they're seeing this, you're now creating childhood trauma for your child that they're going to have to live with and overcome and deal with. And so this is where it becomes generational. And like I told you before, I have childhood trauma and things that I've had to endure that really, really still come up for me when I go into PMDD. And so my biggest fear has been creating that trauma generationally to my daughter, to where she's able to see that and continuing on that cycle. Like, I wanted to break that cycle of childhood trauma, but PMDD almost puts you in a position where you can potentially continue it, not just with your partner, but with your children as well.
Oh, we know that 83%, obviously, women that are diagnosed with PMDD have early childhood trauma and in some cases CPTSD, so repeated trauma over a prolonged period of time. And you've obviously just mentioned that you've experienced early childhood trauma as well. Do you believe that the experiences of your early childhood trauma are potentially what led to having and experiencing these PMDD symptoms?
I think it left the door wide open because there was such a void there. There was so many traumatic moments. It almost specifically, I feel like everything's heightened and magnified when I go into PMDD. A lot of the memories from my childhood come up. And I had went through counseling and therapy to where I thought I healed. That's why I was doing my doctorate in it, because I thought I healed it. And then I was essentially healed from it when I was in my follicular phase. But then when I went into PMDD, I was taken back, like I was dragged back to that same moment in my childhood. I mean, nightmares, having like cold sweats, waking up, feeling like I'm back in like my childhood home. And I'm like, what is going on? Like I remember feeling like I was being tortured by this, like haunted by these memories. And I had done the work and used the tools and, you know, like you said, complex trauma and all these things. But when I went into PMDD, it's almost like none of that mattered. It was like, yeah. And here's the trauma again. And so you relive it, you re-experience it. And I was just like, this is a PMDD thing. Absolutely.
100%. It is a very real thing. You'll hear it across the board from many women, not all, but the ones that have experienced some type of early childhood trauma, that when they're in that luteal phase, memories, nightmares, they said night sweats, things come up still that could have happened that you felt like you had resolved a long time ago. And it's obviously due to the mechanisms of what's happening in the brain. And, you know, we know with the neurotransmitters that are occurring, but it's definitely a very real thing. And I think it can be difficult and challenging for a partner to understand how to support someone who is experiencing PMDD, but also potentially has a history and a background in trauma, because that's a whole other side of the picture that also needs to be resolved, because there's someone that's most likely going to have a much more sensitive nervous system than the average person. So what would be like the one thing that you would recommend out of most of the tools, or even the top 3 tools that a partner could do if they have a partner that has PMDD and potentially has trauma? Like, what are the things that they should do? Like, is it education? Is it communication? You know, attachment styles you've mentioned, but what are some really strong tools that person could implement to help move their partner through? As you said, there's also responsibility on the PMDD side, which I'm going to ask you next. But for the partner side, what are some really good tools that they could potentially implement to help their partner?
The first thing I would say is you need to check in. I'm going to start small and then go bigger. You need to check in with your partner daily. A lot of times partners are assuming what worked last month is still going to work this month. What worked yesterday is what's going to work today. You have to understand that this is an ongoing journey. It's not going anywhere in a sense of where it's like a one-stop shop. Like, oh, I do this and this is going to work every single month. It is going to look different every single day that your partner's in PMDD, and every single month. You just need to be prepared for that. You don't need to be so frustrated with kind of saying, well, this worked last month. Like, you'll get stuck in that place because you'll get really helpless. Like, if you do the same thing, you're like, oh, we had a really good month. I used to do that all the time, have really what I call light months. And I'm like, oh, we finally figured it out. So you relax a little bit. And then the next month it doesn't work again. You have to be willing to know that this is a journey, and you have to be so flexible. You cannot be rigid, and you have to really check in every single day for what are you specifically going through? What is it that you need from me? This is what I need from you. Like, that's why I said it's really big with the communication. Then the next thing is the cognitive behavioral therapy. You know, when I do counseling, a lot of talk therapy for the partners. I need them to get it out. I need them to express what they're going through. The more that they leave it bottled up, I don't want them to have any level of bitterness and resentment and loneliness and helplessness. Like, I need them to have a safe place to where whatever is going on, they can talk it out. They can get it out of their system, and then we can map it out. Okay, so this is how you're feeling. This is what you're going through. What is it that you need in this moment? Because the partner needs to know that they deserve to be treated with care and concern as well, and not to put their needs on the back burner, because that's not sustainable. For short periods of time, if this was like even if it was like a pregnancy, if it was 9 months and it's just like while they're pregnant, they may have these hormones going on. This is what we can probably stretch it for that long. But when we're talking about years and years and years, all of those things are adding up. The last thing is, when you have traumatic moments, you gotta forgive your partner and you gotta forgive yourself. You have to really go and just have that level of grace and compassion for yourself to know that sometimes, even if you're trying your best, even if you're not really trying to trigger your partner or damage the relationship or whatever, forgive yourself so that you're able to move on and you don't get stuck in that. Sometimes there's this self-loathing where you're so busy beating yourself up that you stay stuck in that place and you start to feel like, I'm going to break up with my partner because I believe that they deserve someone better. When you start getting into that loop where you feel like you have to let your partner free because they don't deserve to be with someone as bad as you, there's a lot of self-loathing there and you have to forgive yourself.
Oh, what's the one thing that I guess that women that have PMDD can do to then make sure that they are not projecting or, moving into that abusive sort of tendencies towards their partner? What's something that they can do?
I call it the 3 A's. So it's acceptance, accountability, and affection. When you because here's the thing, I can communicate something to my partner and say that I'm triggering them or they're triggering me or something like that. But when I'm doing it in a very stoic way, which I used to be so guilty of this, of just saying, you're triggering me and blah, blah. Like it was very matter-of-factly. It wasn't like it was my partner. It was almost like I was at a business meeting and just giving them the matter-of-fact way. And a lot of times you may go into PMDD and you may be like that. You have to show affection and really be caring with your partner when you're communicating. Add that affection, hold their hand, touch their leg. They're less likely, your partner is less likely to be as offended if they know that it's coming from a loving place. So I have this other one. It's like, always be loving. Just be loving when you're telling your partner something that may be really hard for them to hear. Be loving while you're doing the communication versus they just need to take it. It is what it is. It's like, no, like you're in an intimate relationship. Don't forget that, because when you go into your follicular phase and you're wanting that love and you're wanting that affection and you're feeling so loving and you're wondering why your partner hasn't snapped out of it. You're like, no, I'm ready to be loving now. It's like, yeah, but you were cold for the whole 2 weeks. Like it's hard for them to bounce back. Partners say they have a really hard time with no affection, no love, just like talking to me like like roommates. And then all of a sudden you're super loving. It's like, you have to have a balance. Even if you don't, I say, if you don't want to put so much pressure and, when you have PMDD, sometimes you don't want to be touched, or there's a lot of things that are very touchy. Like when you go into PMDD, you have to compromise and do something.
All right, everyone listening, the 3 A's. Implement the 3 A's.
Please.
So I guess if there was one key message that you could share with our listeners about PMDD and relationships, what would it be? And is there anything, I guess, that we haven't covered that you really want to make sure that we discuss?
I think it's like going to be the title of the book. You don't have to be single just because you have PMDD. We are meant for relationships. We are meant to connect. We are meant to have that level of support. You should not have to do this alone. I don't want you to feel that because PMDD relationships have been hard for you in the past, that the only thing that you can do is to live a life being single. That is not your punishment. You didn't ask for PMDD. And I always say PMDD is not our fault, but it's our responsibility to manage. Just remember that. We didn't ask for this, but we don't have a pass and just say, oh, take me how I am because I'm in PMDD. Take some accountability for managing it the best way that you know how, and communicate that with your partner and let them know when you're trying to say, babe, I'm trying my best. Like communicate that to them and don't have that big ego going on where it's like, you don't want to just, be open and vulnerable. And if you don't get it right sometimes, just apologize and move on.
I have learned so much from you in this episode, especially around how the partner can feel in regards to even them potentially having suicidal thinking. I had never heard that before. I knew that it could be a really big burden, a lot of stress, but for them to actually be experiencing potentially suicidal thinking as well, I'd never heard of. So I learned something absolutely amazing today around partnerships. Thank you so much, though, for your vulnerability, like your social media. If you have not followed Dr. Rose, I highly suggest you do. She is so vulnerable about her own journey with PMDD. She even shares on, like I said, what day of her cycle she's on and what she's experiencing and how you can navigate that with your relationships. And it's a real vulnerable share. And I'm really glad that we have people like you that, again, are doing PhDs and more research into the topics of PMDD-like relationships that are very under-researched at the moment. So Thank you so, so much. It's been a real pleasure to have you on the podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me.